I just say, I like I said, they choose to use their talents to worship God. And we all get a choice, don't we? We all get a choice with what thing that we've got, and we think it's so meager and it's so small and it doesn't mean anything. And then we turn it over to God, and He said, you know what? Wait till you see what I can do. Wait till you see what I can do. So it's a privilege, and I can't wait till I get to heaven. They'll be coming shortly after me because I'm older than most of them. But yeah. Well, tonight we're going to be talking a little bit differently about, I want to talk to us about expectations again, because I think expectations are important, and we talked a little bit about that last night. But I want to talk a little bit more about how do we process the world's expectations, and then what do we do with that? And when we have expectations, and we're expecting God to do certain things, and we have expectations of God, right? We have and some of them are we're supposed to. But then sometimes the world's expectations get mixed up with what we're expecting. It's a whole hot mess. And so I just want to show you, some of the things that are shaping our lives right now, and how do we combat that? And so I thought I would bring for you some of my favorite things in the world, which are magazines. And I saw that many of you were reading magazines as we were going through our time today. And I love magazines, short little bursts of information. But I really think that they can do some damage if we start to believe this is how the rest of the world lives. Okay, Women's Day. This cracks me up. Ready, set, organize in 10 minutes flat. What area of your home is organized in 10 minutes flat? Can anybody Okay, thank you. The what? The dog's toy box. Well, then you're more organized than I am. Okay, pregnancy and newborns. This is my favorite. I love this. Strike a pose. Yoga to ease your labor pains. Do you know who writes an article like that? A man, or somebody else who has never had labor pains, correct? Morphine! Okay. Any scrapbookers out there? Any scrapbookers? Oh, okay, we've got a few. I don't understand your people. I'm so sorry. I've told my kids, if you want a beautiful scrapbook of your childhood, marry somebody crafty, because it ain't me. I went all in. I went to the scrapbooking parties. Parties. Let me see how much money I can spend. And my friend said, hey, I've got a great idea. Let's make Christmas cards this year. It'll save us so much money. Liars, thieves. Okay, when you buy all the punches, when you buy all the paper, when you buy all the rubber stamps, and let's be clear, the magazine she wanted me to get the pattern out of was $14.99. Do you know how many cards I could buy at the dollar store for $14.99? I was having a conversation. I was at a Christmas tea one time, and we were talking about Christmas and the expectations. And I was talking with a young woman. She couldn't have been more than late 20s. And she says, what stresses me out most about Christmas is the cookies. I'm like, well, you're doing it wrong then, because cookies are awesome. And she said, here's the problem. My sons both like different kinds of cookies, and then my husband likes different kinds of cookies. So I spend one entire week where I'm up till 2 or 3 every morning baking cookies. And so we went on with this conversation. I'm like, you are a much better mom than I am, because I'm like, where Safeway is. Here's a bag of Oreos with a festive green bow on it. Merry Christmas. So when she got up to get some coffee, her mom was sitting at the table with her. And her mom says, what my daughter didn't tell you is that her sons are 5 and 2.5. And all I kept thinking is, those poor future daughter-in-laws, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Craziness. Okay, now you will not know who this is because you're so much more Christian than I am. But the middle one, her name is Heidi Montag, and she was on a show called The Hills. And she's not so famous for being on The Hills, but she's famous because she had over 10 plastic surgeries in one day. 10 in one day. When asked by Juju Chang on ABC, why did you have 10 plastic surgeries in one day? She said, My dream is to be a role model to young girls to help them accept themselves for who they are. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. In Style magazine, they offer to tell you inside for the mere price of $5 what Taylor Swift's beauty secrets are. Let me save you $5. She's 23. Boom. If this wasn't a head mic, I'd be throwing it on the ground. Paula Deen. I love Paula Deen's world because there's nothing in it that a stick of butter cannot solve. Makes me so happy. But when they were talking about, I read an article about them creating this magazine. And it took a team of 16 people over 18 months to do this one issue. And you're stressed out because your Christmas, you have to do all by yourself. The expectations are crazy. And now let's talk about overwhelming, crazy, unapproachable, perfectionistic expectations. And when I say all those words, who do we think of? Thank you. Who said that? I love you. Okay, Martha Stewart. This so cracked me up. I was browsing the magazines. And you know, she has her wedding magazine, Martha Stewart Wedding. Did you know she has a second wedding magazine? It's called Real Weddings by Martha Stewart. Even she's admitting she's cray-cray, okay? Like, here's the magazine for those people who are off their rocker, but here's one that you possibly can attain. And let's just be clear, ladies, when we get to this place of these overwhelming, crazy expectations, we have expectations that things are supposed to look like other people's stuff, and media gives us that perception. And when we have that perception, we start to lose our minds a little bit. We start to think that that's reality, and everything I'm doing, well, obviously I'm failing all the time because I can't keep up. You know what? You're not designed to keep up. When people try to keep up, I mean, they lose their minds. They start to become bitter. They start to become angry. They become resentful. And some of them go to federal prison. Just saying. Just saying. So do you guys remember our 3 frenemies from last night? These 3 things that think that they're, okay, what was our first one? Fear. Oh, good. You guys get an A+. Our second one. Guilt. Third. Shame. You guys are an A+ group. Either that or I've gotten much better at teaching. I'm not sure. You guys, that's okay, I'm ready to break out and cry right now because I've never had that strong of a response. Did you guys identify with those 3? I heard people talking like, well, I'm really struggling with 1 and 2, but I'm okay with 3 right now, but just wait till my kids come home from college. I mean, like, and I love that. Isn't that the truth? Because they pop up like that game at the carnival without expectation. You beat it down, whack-a-mole, and you beat it down, and you need like 8 arms, right? Because they're constantly popping up and saying, and this is why I call them frenemies. They think they're here to protect us. You know what? I'm going to keep you afraid of this so you don't even have to deal with it. I'm going to keep you ashamed so that you don't embarrass yourself anymore. I'm going to make you feel guilty so you'll be a better mom. Lies, lies, lies. They are not our friends, they're our enemies because they are against how God wants us to live. He does not want us to be bound by fear, guilt, and shame. He wants us to live in freedom. He wants us to have exquisite, untastable to the world freedom. And so how do we do that? And when we take the world's impossible expectations and then we put them on ourselves, and then we lose our minds when things don't go according to plan, right? When we start to think, this is how my life should look, and it doesn't turn out that way, because let's be honest, it's not going to, right? We lose our minds. You know, last year, I teach this stuff. I try to live this stuff. But even I forget. And you know when I forget? I forget when I'm tired. I forget when I'm hot. I'm sorry. Heat does me in. And I forget when I'm hungry. And God forbid all 3 of those happened at the same time. I told Roger before we got married, don't let this happen to you. And if it does, may God have mercy on your soul, because I am not responsible for my actions at that point. But can we admit the number one is tired? When we get tired, we get to this place of guilt, fear, and shame, and we let them control our lives. Well, let me just tell you, I was tired. I was bone tired. I had been traveling. I had been all over the place, and I had exactly 36 hours in San Jose for my flight to fly in, 36 hours, my flight to fly out, and it was Father's Day. And I was going to be an awesome wife, and I told my husband, tell me what your perfect Father's Day looks like. Now, how have I already messed myself up? By saying, tell me what perfect looks like to you. Now, Roger is very easy to please, let's be honest. He said, okay, I want Starbucks. God bless the man. He didn't drink Starbucks before we got married. I converted him. He wanted a Sonny's Donut, which is a donut shop in San Jose. He wanted to go to church. He wanted a barbecue. And I don't even know how else to say this, and I've never said this before, but just to be honest and show, he's a real guy, he wanted some alone time when everybody went home. Okay, I can make all those things happen. That is all within my control. Another word I should not be using, correct? Control. So I lost my mind a little bit. I put it on an Excel spreadsheet. I called all the kids and texted them about what they were bringing to the dinner. We were going to make sure it was the perfect Father's Day. So my daughter Kimberly and I get Roger loaded in the car. Roger's driving. And we decide we're going to go to Starbucks first. And we had a schedule we had to keep. So we're at the Starbucks at Oak Ridge Mall. And it's one of those where you merge lanes, okay? So there are people over here and people over here. What is important for you to understand about this story is it was our turn. When I explain the rest of the story, it'll make you less scared to be in the same room with me if you understand it was our turn. So we are in line and we're waiting there for a while, and there's a path that you follow, but you can't block a certain section. So we had been there for a few minutes, and another car, a Mercedes-Benz, I don't know why I have to say that, but I do, comes up on the other side. The car who is in line ahead of us moves forward, and the Mercedes-Benz snags our spot. Our entire car erupted in emotion. I knew Roger was upset because in the first and only time in our marriage, he honked the car horn. I knew he was upset. My daughter in the back, an articulate, beautiful young lady, cannot finish a sentence. I can't believe, what was you think? I don't understand. She's losing her mind. But even though I'm really upset, I'm totally keeping it together. I was the total picture of calm and cool. Until Roger leans over to me and says, Kathy, I need you to calm down. Okay, I was calm. I said, I haven't said a word. I am calm. He said, why are you unbuckling your seatbelt then? And actually, when Roger and Kimberly talked later, they corroborated each other's stories. And apparently, I opened the car door. I lost my mind. So I rolled down the window, and I leaned out, and I screamed, unbelievable! Are you kidding me? Who raised you? I whipped out my phone and I took a picture of the back of their car. What I thought I would do with this picture, I have no idea. Like post pictures around the neighborhood, put it up on Facebook. Well, I did put it up on Facebook. I totally did. But I wanted them to know. So for the next 5 minutes, we are just fuming. We've lost our minds. And we finally get to the spot where we are paying for our drinks, and the Mercedes-Benz runs away as if nothing's ever happened. And I'm seething. And we get up to the barista, and he said, I don't understand what's going on here. We said, well, what? He said, that car in front of you just paid for all your drinks. And they told me to tell you that they were raised by wolves. So people have come up to me and say, that's a really good lesson. I'm like, what's the lesson? Act like a crazy person, scare people into buying your drinks for you? But why did I lose it so deeply? I mean, like, police could have been called to the scene. My expectations. And I expect things to happen how I think they're supposed to happen, my way, because if everybody would just listen to me, right, moms? Couldn't we have saved those kids from a world of hurt if they just listened to us? Yeah, like we listened to our parents? Yeah, like that. But not only do I want it to happen how I want it to happen, I want it to happen when I want it to happen, right? I have a schedule. I have things that need to get done. I don't care about your agenda. I'm on my agenda. And I know that when I start to get those little control things, because I was tired, I was hungry, I was worn out, and I just know that when I start to do that, when I start to control like that, I am saying, I don't trust you, God. I got this. I'll take care of this. You just do what you go help those people in Uganda. I got the Starbucks situation. We have to be in control, but control is just an illusion. We're never in control. We're never in control. I'm going to tell you a situation tomorrow. We are never in control. And we have to do what we can with what we have, with what God has told us to do. And God has told us some things very clearly. Trusting God is not just about trusting him for what he's going to do, what he's promised to do, but trusting for him for when he's going to do it. When God says he will, he will. But his timing doesn't speed up because we are screaming at people. God's timing doesn't speed up because we become more desperate. When we talk about practicing trusting God, and can we just all admit it is practicing? None of us have got this. All of us, hopefully we're getting better a little bit day by day. I think age helps. I think wisdom helps. I think going through some stuff helps. Because you know what? When you've gone through some stuff and God has seen you through it, you can trust him for a future outcome. But don't we have short memories? Like, God, how could you do this to me? Well, God has brought you through this before. He can bring you through it again. But you know what? It's trusting him with the timing. And I want to read to you in Numbers 15. Okay, I'm going to start here. And this is starting in verse 32, talking about a guy who didn't trust God with the timing. So let me read this to you. While the Israelites were in the desert, a man was found gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moses and Aaron and the whole assembly, because you were not supposed to be gathering wood on the Sabbath. You're supposed to be resting, because there is a time for everything. God has appointed a time for everything. And they kept him in custody because it was not clear what should be done to him. Then the Lord said to Moses, "The man must die. The whole assembly must stone him outside the camp." Yeah, okay, so we don't do that anymore at our local congregations if you're a new Christian, okay? If you've got, your Sunday morning job and you hit Sunday night church, nobody will be stoning you. So the assembly took him outside the camp and stoned him to death as the Lord had commanded Moses. Can I tell you, I understand this guy. We all think, oh, well, we would never do that. We would never, if God said, don't gather wood on the Sabbath, I would never do that. I would trust God for the wood, because God says, hey, I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to provide the wood you need. You just need to trust. But how often are we orchestrating the little pieces of our lives and saying, God, I hope you bless it. I hope you bless it. Instead of saying, God, I trust you with this situation. Like I told you last night with Justin and the third option. In my world, there were two options. In God's world, there was another option. There was one that says, I've got Justin. I care more about him than you could ever love him, Kathi. I got him. I care more about your mom and showing off to her because she does not trust in him. God's got the situation. God's got my health. God knows all of these things, but it wasn't happening fast enough for me. And so I felt like I needed to orchestrate all these pieces. And sometimes we have to be willing to let go in order to experience God's bigger plan. We need to be willing to wait instead of taking control back. Because we go to retreats, we go to church, and we give our kids to God, and we give our husbands to God, and we give our jobs to God, and our friendships and our health. And then when it doesn't happen fast enough, we crawl back up on that altar, snatch them back, and say, okay, apparently you're too busy for me, God, so I've got this. I was told a story when I was in junior high about how scientists capture monkeys in Africa in order to use them for science experiments. And so what they would do is they would have this coconut, and they put two holes in the coconut. One was a little bit bigger, and one was really, really tiny. And what they would do is they would strap these coconuts to the trees and put a little piece of fruit inside the coconut. So Mr. Monkey comes along, and he smells the coconut, and he says, okay, he smells the fruit in the coconut, and he reaches his hand in the coconut to grab that piece of fruit. The problem is, when he has his fist bunched up, he can't pull his hand out of the coconut. And so he's sitting there and fighting with it, trying to pull, and he can't get it. And it is said that they will spend 2 to 3 days trapped in that tree, at that tree, because they're not willing to give up that piece of fruit. They only see one option. And how often are we that monkey with the coconut? We've got that little piece of fruit in our hand, that little piece of control. Here's what I can do with this situation, with my husband, with my kids, with my job, with my health, with my life. And I'm just going to hold on to it. And God's saying, would you let it go? Would you trust me? Would you trust me? Not just with the plan, but with the timing. And things, when they don't happen enough and we start to get desperate, we stop waiting patiently. I was a desperate, desperate mom about 10 years ago. Probably 11 years ago now, wow. I was a desperate mom because I was unemployed. I was a single mom, and I had moved to a new place. I love Sacramento, California, but let me just say that was my desert time. It was my time where I had to trust God for every little thing because I did not know what was going to be happening. I didn't have a job. I had 2 kids. I had no child support. I had nothing going on. And I'll be honest with you, I was grieving a lot of things at that point. Number one, I was grieving the loss of my marriage. I was brokenhearted. There were biblical reasons why I needed to get divorced. But it's still a failure, no matter how you look at it. And it's a heartbreak. And it's devastating. And it's awful. And I grieved a whole family for my kids. That's what I wanted for them. That's what I imagined for them. And that was not something I had for them anymore. And can I admit something that it's taken me 11 years of this story to really just be able to say this out loud in a full sentence. I grieved the little tiny speaking and writing ministry that was budding up at that point. I had been asked to do a little bit of speaking at MOPS. I'd even done a couple of retreats, and things had gone really well. And gosh, I loved it so much. And I felt so used by God. And I was starting to do a little writing, and I got a couple of things published. And I got published in Focus on the Family, and I got published in some magazine articles. And great things were happening. And, they were small, but they were great to me. And as a single mom, I grieved that I couldn't do that anymore because I had to find a job. I had to take care of these kids. I had to get down to the business of surviving. And I was a little angry with God. God, why would you give me this dream? Why would you give me a taste of something I love only to take it back? Has that ever happened to you? You fell in love with a man and he was taken away. You carried this child for 4 months, and then you found out it was being taken away. This is so small compared to so many devastations that so many of us have. But we understand the feeling. Why give me the taste when I can't experience it? We all have something like that in our lives. But I had to get on with my life. I had to get on and get busy and keep doing stuff. And I moved to Sacramento, and for months, I looked for a job. And at first, I had very lofty aspirations. And then I remember at one point saying, God, I've worked food services before. I will do anything as long as it doesn't involve a hairnet. Please, I just don't want to wear a hairnet. Because that's the hardest work, putting meals together, doing all that kind of thing. And then at one point, when I hadn't found a job in 3 months, I was ready to go buy a hairnet at Walmart and put it on an altar and say, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I just need to make some money at this point. Well, within the period of about 3 days, all these job interviews, all these things I had been on, I got 3 job offers right at the same time. It was incredible. Now, the first one was for a sales rep. Now, I had been a sales rep before, and I went on this job interview because I was going on any job interview. The problem with being a sales rep is you get paid on commission, so I wouldn't see a check for several more months, and the first couple checks would be tiny. And so I thought, okay, that's not my best option. The second option was working for a Christian legal agency. Now, I think I would have liked the people, all that kind of stuff. The problem was that they wanted me to do basically data input, little numbers in little boxes. Have I mentioned that I'm dyslexic? Like, of all the jobs you don't want me to do, and the one that for me would be the most soul crushing. Now, if you are a little numbers in little boxes person, if you're an accountant, you do anything like that, can I just say thank you? Because you keep people like me out of jail, okay? I so admire people who can do that and do it well. It's just not me. But then I got a third job offer. It was working for The Fish, the Christian radio station in the Sacramento area. And I thought, I'm home. It was selling ad space. It was going to be awesome. It was going to be so much fun. I was going to meet all these people in my new community. It was going to be killer. And so I made the decision I was going to take the radio sales job, which was, by the way, salary, a good salary, plus commission. So awesome, right? And then I remembered, oh, wait, you're a Christian. You should probably pray about it, Kathy. Okay. So I told my jobs I needed the weekend to pray. And so I was going back to San Jose to see some of my friends, and I had 2 couples there that were dear friends of mine. And I said, would you guys pray for me? But I knew which job I was going to take, obviously. And so they all prayed because they're those kind of people when you pray, ask them to pray. It's not just like, I'm praying for you on Facebook, and then you go away and you get distracted by kitties playing with yarn in a video. These people pray. Not that any of you have ever done that. By Sunday night, each of the 4 people had come to me and said, you're supposed to take the legal agency job, aren't you? I'm like, you need a little more Jesus. I said, that is the worst decision ever. It's the worst decision. I needed some fun in my life. I needed something that was going to be exciting and enjoying, and I needed something fun. And by Sunday night, I knew God spoke to me so clearly for like one of 3 times in my life that I was supposed to take the legal agency job. Like, really? This is the time you get crystal clear? Take the horrible job you're going to hate for the rest of your life. I called on Monday morning. They couldn't believe I was taking the job. I couldn't believe I was taking the job. I thought, this is the craziest thing ever. Why am I taking this job? I don't want to do this. I would love to be able to tell you that I showed up that Monday morning and the day just flew by. For the first 3 weeks of that job, I showed up and I would look up at the clock and say, it has to be close to lunchtime. And it was 9:14. I hated that job. It is the worst job I hated it. And by the way, I was terrible at it. Terrible. I was there for 3 weeks, and at one point, somebody in the office manager said, hey, Jane's out, and she's the one who normally writes the little article for our newsletter. Would somebody else be willing to do that? Yes, please. I said, but I think it's going to take me a couple of hours that I need away from the numbers and little boxes. They said, that's totally fine. You take a couple of hours, work on the article, and then come back to us. Well, the article got a good response, and they said, would you like to do an article for us every week? And I said, yes, but I worked really hard and really fast on that last one, so I think I need 4 hours away from the numbers and boxes in order to do that. And they said, that's fine, that's fine. And then they needed a donation letter. And I'm like, well, a letter that's going to be really hard. I think I need 5 hours. They said, fine, take 5 hours. That's awesome. And so eventually I started writing all their press releases and doing all of that kind of stuff. And then the president came to me. He said, didn't you used to do some speaking? I said, yeah, just to little moms groups and things like that. He said, well, he was going to be traveling more nationally, and he wondered if I would take over the speaking for the local Sacramento groups. I said, speaking takes a lot of time, you know. He says, how about this? Anytime you go speak, you don't have to come in for the rest of the day. You know, that's your one thing. I said, sign me up. Can I pay you to do this? Then they decided that they were going to do something called the Celebration of Justice, which is a big gala event. And they were going to do it every 6 months, once in Northern California, once in Southern California, to raise funds. And they asked me if I would be interested in leading that. And I said, they're like, we know, it's going to take a lot of time. They said, how about we pull you off of boxes and numbers, and your full-time job becomes event planning, writing, and speaking. That happened almost now 11 years ago. I still get chills when I think about it. Think about God's timing in all of that. God said, you know what, Kathy, now is not the time for you to be going out and say, I needed a job where I could be with my kids, where I could be healing, be with them. It could be healing. It could be good. We could be reestablishing what our family looks like. But the whole time I was getting paid to be trained to do what God has called me to today. And just like this morning where Salvation Army, that makes no sense. Numbers and boxes, that makes no sense. The timing doesn't make any sense. God's timing is perfect every time. God's timing is perfect every time. You know, my kids were broken. I was broken. I write about it here in the Me Project, about what does God's timing look like in those kind of situations. And I think about this, that, you know, the previous couple of years of homeschooling my kids and speaking and writing sporadically, I was so sad, downright bitter, that I had to give that up to get a job I knew I was probably going to hate. I read that to you because that comes straight from my journal at the time, where I was thinking, I was bitter. I was bitter because I didn't trust God for the timing on that. Anybody else in that place where it's like, the waiting, God, okay, I've learned to wait. Can we get on with this? Anybody else feel like that right now? Anybody else feel like, okay, you need this then. Can you pass this back to her? Kathy, could you hand that? It's Jukes? Jules, okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Um, we're in this place where it's like, okay, God, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And do you just want me to give up? Do you want me, we're in this place of questioning and waiting. What is this going to look like? What is my life going to look like? What is this relationship going to look like? And can I just tell you, I know the waiting is so hard, but can I tell you, there is good stuff in the waiting. Anybody who's had to wait, and if you're in the midst of it right now, you're like, I don't believe you. I understand. I get that. But let me tell you the good stuff that comes in the waiting. This does not mean that we look forward to having to be patient, but let's not waste the waiting. Let's figure out what God's trying to do in that. Number one, it builds patience. Oh, I hate that. Patience is one of the greatest gifts that God builds in us. Usually anything good in our lives must be waited on. How many times has good stuff just shown up at your door? But we all know the stories of when we waited and waited and waited and God provided. And can I just say, usually the good stuff requires waiting without the guarantee of a good outcome, correct? We're waiting in the unknown. It's a scary place to be, and you don't want your heart to get attached. It's so hard. But it builds patience, which affects every other area of our lives. It builds character. Number two, it builds character. Character is built in the in-between. In between successes. Don't show me what your successes are. Tell me how you've handled your failures. And I don't want to know how you handled your failures 10 years ago. Let me hear about last year. That's where your character is. Because 10 years ago, you were younger, you didn't know as much, you didn't know God as well. But as you've grown to know him, how has that changed how you build your character in the in-between?